Good morning. Today is Wednesday, May 21st, and this is Devotions from St. Paul Evangelical Lutheran Church in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. We're going to take a passage today from Luke's Gospel, and it's going to be the beginning of a parable that many people know, the parable of the Good Samaritan. But it won't actually include the parable, it'll just include the introduction. So this is from the 10th chapter of Luke's Gospel. Just then a lawyer stood up to test Jesus. "Teacher," he said, "what must I do to inherit eternal life?" Jesus said to him, "What is written in the law? What do you read there?" He answered, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself." And Jesus said to him, "You have given the right answer. Do this, and you will live." The young lawyer goes on to challenge Jesus again and asks the question, "Who is my neighbor?" And that leads into the parable of the Good Samaritan. But let's take the part that Jesus answered in this part. You will love the Lord your God, and you will love your neighbor as yourself. That's the two parts to the Great Commandment. It's also the two parts to the Ten Commandments. Because if you love God and you treat your neighbor as if you really love him, then you will meet all the parts of the Ten Commandments. And so Jesus says, if you do this, you will live. But see, the problem is, we as humans are not able to do this. Now, this young lawyer was a Jewish man, an Israelite, and they have a different take on that than we do, on actions, on what consists of what makes a sin, okay, that would lead you to not do what he just read and did. I read a weekly column by a rabbi who used to write with a Catholic priest under the title of the God Squad. And he talks all kinds of topics these days. But one of them that he read in the last couple of months was about this idea of justification by faith or by works. And he said at that time, the Jews are the ultimate works-based faith. It's what you do. He even went so far as to say it's not what you think, but it's what you do. That is very different from what we believe. And I think that based upon the teachings of Jesus, it's different from what Jesus taught. He taught that anything that you think can be a sin. So he says, if you look at a woman, you have already lustfully, you have already committed adultery with her in your heart. And he says, if you are angry with your brother, you are liable to the sin of murder. And so the standards are different. And it's all what you do and what you think. And so we have to be faith-based rather than action-based because we just don't meet the standard of the actions. But when the young man continued his conversation, and Jesus said, do these things and you will live, the first comments out of his mouth were, I have done all these things since I was a youth. And so you see the very different parts of the different religions. Now, this makes me very, very thankful for the life and time, the sacrifice on the cross and the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Because without that, I would be a lost soul. And this answer, I think, is absolutely right. I think it's the reason and the background for when Moses got the Ten Commandments from God, and that if we could actually do that, the words that Jesus spoke would be right. But the only human being so far that has ever lived at that standard is Jesus himself. Everyone else falls short. And that's part of why Jesus came to this world, so that he could be the perfect sacrifice, so that when we fall short, he covers that for us. And so he has redeemed us to the Father, and now we don't have to worry anymore as long as we believe in Jesus. This is a complicated passage in it, and it gets even more complicated when it includes the actual parable of the Good Samaritan. But it sets a standard that we can't meet, and it sets a standard that only Jesus has met, and it says to me, we really need Jesus, and he came through. He made the sacrifice, and now we are reconciled to his Father, our God, through his blood, through his sacrifice, and now we have entry into eternal life through his resurrection. You should read this on your own. You should make your own judgment. You should see what you think about this. And I would tend to tell you, include the part that's the actual parable of the Good Samaritan, because it goes on to tell of two men who had better things to do than take care of this man that was hurt. And that tends to be how we are. We tend to think of what we want, what's good for us, even in these two guys' cases, maybe just what helps us to meet the law. But Jesus has us go beyond that, to actually take care of our neighbor, and to actually love God so that we love his commandments. I do hope you'll read this. I do hope you'll think about this. Jesus' sacrifice is so important to us. Thank you.